everyone, bonjour tout le monde, happy Saturday, bon samedi. Welcome to another episode of The Politician and His or Her Idol. But like always, before I introduce you to our guest today, I would just like to highlight the purpose of this talk show brought to you by Boxia and Via Media. We want to bring Canadian politicians closer to the population, closer to you specifically, allowing you to discover a hidden facet of them. A facet that is not accessible to us perhaps on a daily basis. However, they are humans just like us, you and I. They definitely have an idol or a source of inspiration that have influenced who they have become today. So it could be really anyone, an activist, an artist, a political figure, and numerous other possibilities. So without further ado, we are delighted to have MP Rob Oliphant with us today. So welcome, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm great, Irene. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us.
It's my pleasure. And I think anything that brings people who are politicians closer to people who are not politicians, the better. So thank you for doing your show and congratulations. It's your first season and I've already watched one episode and I think you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you for the compliment. We'll keep continuing to do a great job, hopefully. So for those of you who don't know who our special guest is, Rob is a Liberal Member of Parliament representing the Toronto riding of Don Valley West from 2008 to 2011, and then he returned to office after re-election in 2015 and subsequently now in 2019. And he's currently the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So, Rob, is that correct, or did I miss something?
That's all right. So, and I like to get it right there. I've had 4 elections. I've won 3, and I lost 1, and winning is a lot more fun. So I'm glad to be back in Parliament again. This is my my 3rd term, and I have a great job of being Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So I love my work. I love representing the people of Don Valley West, which is in Midtown Toronto, a very diverse and interesting and creative riding. And if people know Toronto at all, they might have heard of Sunnybrook Hospital. Sunnybrook Hospital is right in the middle of my riding, so it's just north of downtown, but south of the 401.
Awesome. Yes, I completely agree with you that winning is a lot more fun. Actually, I was checking your profile and your involvement, and I couldn't believe how many things you have done and achieved in the past 3 decades, if I'm not wrong.
I know.
1980s. So, the role you held, the senior role you held at the Ontario Premier's David Peterson's office, for example, right? And when you were younger, as an active young Liberal, kind of serving as the president of the University of Toronto Liberal Club, training in tour operations for Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, et cetera, right? Advising in Michael Ignatieff's campaign, winning, losing and winning again, right? As you mentioned. So politics, would you say, is it your passion, your mission, something that you didn't expect and it came with the time? Or as I would put it, based on what I saw or read about you, is you were born to do politics, basically, as you were always surrounded by politicians and many sources of influence, right? Can you share a little bit more about that with us?
I come from a family that was political, particularly my mom, but also my dad, and they were involved in Liberal Party. And I'm sort of genetically a Liberal. And it's something that's always been part of my family background, but I'm not a career politician. I had a full other career. I've had several careers. I did a business degree at University of Toronto, and I became an accountant. I worked in systems accounting for a couple of years in a steel company. Mm-hmm. I come from Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario, and I went back to the Soo to work as an accountant. I found that wasn't really my calling. I felt a calling to ministry in the church, and I became an ordained United Church of Canada minister. So I went out to UBC. I did my degree in theology on that campus, and I was ordained as a minister. And for 24 years, I served as a minister in Yukon, in Quebec, and BC, in Toronto. And it was later in life. I was 52 years old when I thought, okay, I've talked a lot about what I thought politicians should do.
Mhm.
Now it's time for me to actually do it. So instead of being a backroom person as a campaign manager or as an assistant, I put my name out there in 2008 and got elected. But it's been in the blood. It's in my family blood, and it's always been about trying to make the world just a little bit better.
Awesome. Well, as before we continue, as you can see, I'm on the couch at home, so feel free to make yourself very comfortable, as it is going to be a relaxed conversation. So if you have a cup of water or tea around, feel free to grab it as well and take a sip. So just wondering if you had a message for your constituents, your family, friends, or audience watching us right now in Ontario, across Canada, and perhaps internationally even.
So these are difficult days. Let's not shy away from the fact that we're in a global pandemic. COVID-19 has changed the way we relate to each other. It's profoundly affected individuals, both health-wise. We've had over 100,000, close to 110,000 Canadians infected. We've had close to 10,000 Canadians die. And that's affected real families, real people that have lost people they love. And so it's a health crisis. It's also been an economic crisis. And people have lost their jobs, and the small business owners have struggled to keep going and keep well. And large businesses too have suffered a huge series of setbacks that are really something that we worry about. So it's affected us financially. It's affected us from a health perspective, and I think it's affected all of us psychologically too. And we're all a little bit nervous about where the world's going to go, what's going to happen next, how are we going to get back to normal, when are we going to get back to normal. And so these are all issues that I think people in Toronto and Don Valley West, people in Ontario, people in Canada, people around the world are worried about. And so that's shaped my third term in Ottawa. My wings are clipped. I've not been traveling. I usually travel a lot, both to Ottawa and around the world. But the world comes to us, and so we meet virtually. I'm talking to people around the world all the time, and this is a big deal. COVID-19 will change us and change our world, and we're just trying to make sure that people don't get left behind. So we have the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. We have the wage subsidy. We have the business account. We have a major set of programs that are designed to help Canadians so we can weather this storm and hopefully come out on the other side and build back better, so that we have a country that's strong and secure, and people take care of each other, which is what it's supposed to be about.
Right, exactly. Uncertainty is definitely tough, but we are going to get through this together.
Absolutely.
Which is why the talk show exists. I mean, we wanted to bring kind of a different type of recipe, I guess, to the game. So I was just wondering, and just quickly before we move on to the $1 million question about who your sources of inspirations are or is, when you received this talk show invitation, what was your first impression?
My first impression was good. It was this is a creative idea, bringing politicians closer to people, people closer to politicians, recognizing that we're human too, and that it's something. And I'm going to be quoting my idol in a minute about that, because I think this show is doing something. I don't want to jump the gun. I'm going to jump the gun. What Bobby Kennedy said, and Bobby Kennedy, an American senator, former Attorney General of the United States, said, sometimes people think that because you have money and position, you're immune from the whole human experience. He said that I can feel as lonesome and as lost as the next person when I turn the key in the door and go into an empty house that's usually full of kids and dogs. When he said that, I think it reminded me that politicians, we're just other human beings. We're trying to find a way to live well together, to make a difference, to get back home, and to find family and friends who love us. And so this show, when I got the invitation for the show, I thought, great, let's do this and open some doors and see how people respond.
Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much for sharing one of the quotes for Bobby Kennedy. I mean, you guys share the same name as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, it is time to find out a little bit more now
Sure.
about Bobby Kennedy and perhaps another person or multiple other
Yeah.
people. So tell us a little bit more, who was the person or the people who influenced you and shaped who you are today? Do they have something in common, perhaps?
Well, I want to take us back and take your viewers back and friends who are out there over 50 years ago to 1968. Many of your viewers won't have been born at that time. It's over 50 years ago, 52 years ago. 1968 was a year that our world was turned upside down. The Vietnam War was going on, and students and people around the world were protesting about that. There was a incursion of the Soviet Union into Czechoslovakia. There was a variety of things around human rights. And Canada had just finished a centennial year and was emerging into a new era. And it was an election year in 1968 in the United States and in Canada. And there were some pretty notable things that happened. And one of the saddest things was the assassination of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. died in 1968 by a bullet of an assassin, and he was a profound spokesperson. He was a minister ordained. He was leading the civil rights movement in the United States and leading it peacefully. The other person who died in June of 1968 was Bobby Kennedy.
Yes.
And Bobby's brother was probably the more famous one, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States from 1960 to 1963. But Bobby Kennedy had been his attorney general and was elected senator from New York, and then decided in 1968 to run for the Democratic nomination to become president. And I really do believe he would have won that nomination and won the presidency if Sirhan had not shot and killed him in Los Angeles just after he won the primary, the California Democratic primary. And Bobby Kennedy, for me, was young and visionary. He had a social justice mentality. And probably the most famous thing he ever said was that some men or some people see things as they are and they ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not.
Mhm.
I love that. I dream of things that never were, and I ask why not. This is tremendously important. He was a visionary. He was young. He was fresh. He had 10 kids. He and his wife Ethel. She was actually pregnant with her last child when he was killed. And for me, I can still remember that day of him being killed, and something in me broke. Something in me fell apart because I was so hopeful for a world that could be different and better. And it was the end of that vision, that dream. It was the end of something that I had really thought was important. But at the same time, something new was emerging in Canada. And Pierre Trudeau won the nomination to become the leader of the Liberal Party in April of 1968, and went on June 25th, 1968, to become the Prime Minister of Canada. And his energy, his charisma, his openness, his vitality, his inclusiveness, his wisdom, all of those things I found tremendously inspiring.
Right.
So 1968, I was 12 years old. I was a boy. And I saw my dreams dashed as I saw Bobby Kennedy assassinated.
Yes.
But I saw my dreams. I was inspired as I saw Pierre Trudeau become leader of the Liberal Party and then Prime Minister of Canada, and one of our longest serving prime ministers ever. So that was a pretty pivotal year, 1968, and two people who inspired me to make a difference in the world.
Right. Wow, many qualities that I hear from, being young, visionary, and social justice advocate, energetic, charismatic, et cetera, all very important qualities for leaders.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Bobby Kennedy, JFK, the brother. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, Martin Luther King, who was assassinated in the same year as Bobby Kennedy.
Yes.
Right.
It's the reality was that I can still. There was a movie that came out. I think it was Oliver Stone did it on Bobby Kennedy, just called Bobby, and it was that campaign. And I could hardly watch it because it brought back every memory of waking up that morning as a 12-year-old and just thinking, um, how can there be so much evil in the world? How can there be so many people wanting to dash the dreams of others? But equally, I can remember the exuberance and the wonderful, tremendously warm and energetic feelings I had later, just a couple of weeks later, when Pierre Trudeau was elected prime minister, and he talked about making sure that Canada was open and a home for everyone who lives in this country, regardless of where they were from,
Yes.
what language they were spoke in their home, and making sure they had opportunities and bringing Quebec and Quebecers fully into the country, opening the doors on Indigenous Canadians, opening the doors on LGBTQ Canadians, making sure, as he very famously said, that the state has no business in the bedrooms of the nation. And as a gay person, I'm a gay politician. I'm a human being who is gay. 12 years old, and Pierre Trudeau said, "I'm okay. It's okay to be who you are. The state should not interfere. It should not be illegal to be gay. And I want to protect your rights," is what he said. And by 1982, when he brought in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that profoundly set the stage for all of us, men and women, straight people, gay people, immigrants, newcomers, refugees, to find a way in this country to make sure that we all have a chance, and that it's the whole of Canada approach. And that's why I was so inspired by Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
I completely agree with you. I feel like it's extremely important that each of us, right, all individuals can stay truthful to themselves without having to live a life to please perhaps others' opinions or perspectives, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
For the audience who just tuned in, actually right now, we're with MP Rob Oliphant, and he's speaking about his sources of inspiration, such as Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, as well as Bobby Kennedy. So are you ready to continue, Rob?
I'm great. Take
Awesome.
her away, Irene.
So this next question is actually related to what you just mentioned, the openness of Canada. Right, so most of us think that Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, Jean Chrétien, contributed most to Canada's diversity, Canadian pride, and the current openness to the world. However, according to history books also mentioned in this, I'm going to show you a bilingual comic book. I don't know if you can see well.
I do.
Published in 2016 by the Canadian Foundation for Cross-Cultural Dialogue, and funded by Canadian Heritage, saying that the first Francophone Prime Minister, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, is considered, as you can see in the title, the builder of today's Canada.
I would totally agree with that. What Sir Wilfrid Laurier did was he reminded us famously that we were a country of newcomers, except for the Indigenous Canadians, except for people who went back millennia, and it's a relatively small number. All of us have come from somewhere else. My family, my mother's family, came in the 1700s to Canada from England. In the 1730s and 40s, they came to Canada from Kent and established themselves in the Ottawa Valley, then Owen Sound, and then all over Ontario as a family that was building a new country. My father's family came a little bit later in the late 19th century. But what Sir Wilfrid Laurier did was he reminded us that we will always have one foot in the country where we came from, but we have to have one foot reaching into the country we're living in. We remember our past and all of the stuff that we bring to this country, the rich cultures, the heritage languages, the examples, the all of those things that we bring, whether it's our food or fashion or our way of being, and we bring them here to Canada to build a new country. And we do that respectfully of the Indigenous Canadians. We do that respectfully of the founding peoples, English and French. We do it respectfully that Canada will change every time a newcomer comes. Every time someone makes Canada their home, Canada changes just a little bit. And so that's good. Canada should change. We hold on to our roots. We hold on to what has built this country, but we're open to newness every day. And I think that's something that Pierre Trudeau very much embraced. He embraced the Laurier view of a world. So that's why when Idi Amin was in Uganda and persecuting Ismaili Muslims, he opened the door and welcomed Ismailis to come to Canada. And that's a fantastic thing. He opened the door to people from Bangladesh. He opened the door to people from the Punjab, to people from India, people from China. He started the door by the recognition of the People's Republic of China when nobody else would. And he wanted the world to see that Canada was that light on a hill and that people should be drawn to it. People should make it their home and build it. So what he did the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protect us, protect me, protect you, to protect every one of our viewers today, and to make sure that we all found Canada to be a home. You know, he said that his life was one long curve full of turning points. That was Pierre Trudeau. And it was. I mean, he started out as a lawyer, a human rights advocate, a civil rights advocate, a law professor. I don't think he ever planned to be prime minister. And then he found himself, Lester Pearson, Mike Pearson, drafted him with a couple of others to come to Ottawa. There were probably some people ahead of him. He found a path, and someone asked him whether he was lucky. And he said, no, luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. So he was prepared for the challenge. And I always try to follow what Pierre Trudeau said on that I don't wait for luck to happen. I prepare. I try to make myself available to learning and knowledge and wisdom and insights from books and from other people. And then I wait, because when opportunity happens, then I can feel lucky. And I am a very lucky person because my preparation and opportunity have met often.
Awesome. It sounds like you're very grateful for really the openness, and thank you so much for the welcoming words. I mean, you're a very open-minded person, that's for sure. I can relate.
Well, it's a great privilege being a member of Parliament, but it's not the ultimate goal. I mean, I sometimes look at some MPs and they have a whole goal of becoming an MP, of being an MP. That was never my goal, just to be an MP. I want to do the work of an MP. I've had a very good last little while. I worked on a law that would prohibit genetic discrimination. I was the sponsor of a bill in the House of Commons to add a section and a whole bill called the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act that makes it illegal to discriminate against anybody because of their DNA, because of their genetic or chromosomal makeup. And just recently, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld that as a constitutional law. And that's a big deal. Getting a private member's bill passed in Canada is not easy. Most of them fail. But getting one passed, even when the government disagreed with it, my own government didn't want the bill to pass, we got it passed. And we got enough Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and Green to vote for it. And then the Supreme Court has said it is legal, it's now the law, and it is in place. And nobody needs fear getting a genetic test to make sure that they're not at risk of breast cancer or cervical cancer, prostate cancer, or Huntington disease or Parkinson's disease because of a genetic makeup. And that's a good day when Parliament can do a piece of work. The Supreme Court of Canada can uphold it, and Canadians can be healthier and safer. It makes me very proud to be Canadian and very proud to be a member of Parliament.
Yes, I was going to mention that you are also in foreign affairs now, so that's really important. I mean, to have that mentality, vision, et cetera, all the good qualities that you mentioned, essentially.
Well, I love my work. I love working with my minister, François-Philippe Champagne, and our whole team. It's been tough through COVID-19. We had a lot of Canadians stranded overseas, and we've been working hard to bring them home. Most of them are home now. And now I'm hoping that the skies open up and we can start traveling again soon, because I think we travel both to take Canada's message to the world, but also for Canadians to hear that we can learn from other people too. We can learn from people around the world, around the globe, and make Canada better, because we don't have a monopoly on goodness or truth or anything like that. We can make our world better by learning from others.
Definitely. Well, you actually already put on your MP hat before when you mentioned, certain measures or laws being passed. I was going to ask you to put on that MP hat momentarily, but for this next question, I promise you that it's not going to be as intense as in the House of Commons. It's going to be quite fun and no political issues here, but still related to one of your sources of inspiration, and you quickly touched upon it at the beginning. So I'm referring to Bobby Kennedy and also his brother, JFK. They were both assassinated due to their political beliefs, position. But we haven't really had many tragic events like this in Canada. Are you aware of any at all in history?
Sure. I mean, Darcy McGee was assassinated, but also Louis Riel, who was not assassinated, but killed inappropriately. He was a Métis out west, and it's a reminder that the fight for human rights, the fight for civil rights, the fight for Indigenous rights is difficult, and you have to do that. But again, I'll quote Bobby Kennedy when he said, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly." So you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to fail greatly if you ever want to get anything done, to achieve greatly. And so I think with Louis Riel or even any Canadian who's trying to make a difference in the world, it's going to cost you something. It is going to be tough. In this riding where I am, Don Valley West, we were represented provincially by Agnes MacPhail. Agnes MacPhail was the first woman ever elected to the federal House of Commons. No, not from this riding, from up in Grey County. But after her time in Parliament as the first woman, she moved to Toronto, lived in Leaside, and she represented this area in the provincial legislature. And Agnes MacPhail knew what it was to suffer. She was demeaned. She was pushed aside because she was a woman. We've come a long way since then. We're still not finished yet. Women in politics, younger people, people of color. We've watched about racism profoundly these last several weeks as we've looked at tape after tape of police brutality against people of color, and we're not there yet. So Agnes MacPhail was an early pioneer. She had a wisdom and a vision, but she paid a price, and it was hard slogging for her. So she'd also be one of my heroes. I might also mention Judy LaMarche. Judy LaMarche was the second woman to join the federal cabinet. The first was Ellen Fairclough, but Judy LaMarche is that when she was Secretary of State, she brought in the Canada Pension Plan and the Old Age Security, and she worked on the Canadian flag and Expo 67 and our centennial year. But it was tough for her as a woman in politics. It's a little bit easier now, but it is still tough. It's still tough for gay and lesbian people. It's still tough for people of color. But we're making a difference. And by bringing these thoughts and ideas forward on a show like this, maybe the next generation is going to have a little bit of an easier time because they see people like themselves in politics. And so I think that's great.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, we are doing a great job, but of course, there is always can always do better, a little
Yeah,
bit more than we can do.
very good.
So, according to you and the law, what measures could be put in place to better protect maybe high figure, well, not high figures, but more like high level kind of figures, politicians or people like Uriel that you mentioned, or in case we experience things or events like this in Canada?
Well, I honestly think we're a very safe country. This is a country. Obviously, I want to make everybody's lives safer, not just politicians. And so I want stricter gun control. I want to make sure that people who shouldn't get guns don't get guns, and the dangerous guns are kept off the streets. I'm very pleased that we're banning assault rifles completely across the country. I'm ready to ban handguns, though, too. This is not popular with some people, but I don't think there's a place for guns. So I think if you take a ban on handguns, I'm not out to get the hunters. I'm not out to get people who are legitimate firearms users, but I want guns to be extraordinary. I want them to be unusual, and it's not a right to bear arms in this country. It's a responsibility and a privilege. And so I want to keep everybody safe, not just politicians. So let's deal with gangs, let's deal with guns, and let's make our streets safer. And then all of us will have a better life.
Completely agree. I would love to continue for so much longer, but I just checked the time and it seems that we don't have much time left as it flew by. So, just quickly, do you have any last words you want to share with our audience?
What I want to say is that for me, politics is where people and ideas come together. And what we try to do in politics is remember how important it is to have big ideas, to have creative solutions, to do something that, as Bobby Kennedy said, not just asking why things are, but dreaming of things that never were and asking why not. But it's also all people, and bringing those great ideas on one side together with wonderful people on this side, putting them together is why I'm in politics. So to the people of Don Valley West, thank you for putting your faith in me and electing me again to be a member of parliament. For the people of the city of Toronto, keep safe and make sure that we get the heart of Ontario going as its capital and a business capital of Canada. To the people of Ontario, we live in a great province. Every province and territory is great. And to the people of Canada, let's modestly take our message of inclusion and show the world that it can be done and that we're stronger because of our diversity. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your inspiring words, Rob. I would have to say you are very much like your sources of inspiration. I mean,
Well,
very visionary, charismatic, energetic, etc.
A little part of it, because those are great people, whether it's Agnes MacPhail or Judy LaMarche, Bobby Kennedy, Pierre Trudeau, Martin Luther King Jr. These are great figures in our public life, and I just try a little bit to learn from them. So thank you.
So let's say bye to our audience. Thank you
Bye,
so
everybody.
much for being here with us, Rob. It was a pleasure having you. And for everybody watching us, hope to see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to follow us on social media. The talk show broadcasts every Saturday at 11 a.m., same time, same channel. À bientôt. Prenez soin de vous. Hasta pronto. 再见.
Salut, bye-bye.
artistes.